Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Underground. This is the Intel update for September 22nd through the 28th, 2024. I thought that today I would do a little bit of a return to tradition and just stick with the audio and the slide overlay for today. I know that some people prefer the way I used to do things a couple years ago with just the audio, just the slides, but I also know that some people prefer breaking up the sort of death by PowerPoint with a little bit of back and forth. But anyway, I thought I would switch it up today and see how it goes. So let's get right to it. Beginning with the Northeast region in New York. New York City Mayor Eric Adams was indicted on varying charges this week, and so far, rumor from within his office indicates that he will be surrendering himself next week sometime. Most of the charges appear to be along the lines of campaign finance violations and or bribery. Allegedly, he was taking money from the Turkish government in the form of straw donations, which were intended to curry favor with the Turkish government. So again, this is a very interesting case, mostly because federal agencies usually don't want to get involved with sort of campaign finance violations, again, because of the implication of that. And they don't normally want to open the Pandora's box of examining politicians' campaign donations. So I guess we'll see what comes of it. Adams has stated that he's going to fight this, so he looks like he's probably not going to take this lying down. So again, we'll see how this works out. But my guess is that he probably won't be involved in New York politics for a while. So moving down to Washington, D.C., another concerning development with regards to congressional actions being sort of an indication and warning of things that might be a little bit more serious. There is currently a bipartisan effort within Congress to improve continuity of governance plans with regards to congressional leadership. In short, Congress is concerned about a mass decapitation strike of some kind that will result in the death of many, many elected officials all at the same time. Just as a reminder, the idea of continuity of governance is not something that typically is reserved to just America. This is something that every government does. Really, it's just a way of disaster preparedness on a very, very large scale. You might even say that the whole Cold War era was really just one giant continuity of governance plan between the United States and Russia or the Soviet Union. So these things are not entirely surprising, and it's not like the U.S. government doesn't have doomsday plans like already in practice and already like kind of agreed upon. This is really just low-level congressmen kind of getting together and considering rather specific situations. Again, like I wrote in The Wire, preparedness is a very interesting concept because when a citizenry does things like prepares for, personnel losses or mass decapitation strikes or, very, very kinetic things like this is prudent, right? When an individual does it or even when a military unit does it, it's prudence, it makes a lot of sense. However, when a government does this sort of thing, especially the one that we have now, it draws a lot of cause for concern because people don't really jump to the assessment that, oh, good, Congress is preparing, they're actually doing the right thing for once. No, the instinctive reaction to this is, what is Congress planning to do? So again, these things are kind of concerning. I would be slightly concerned about this, but not really any more so than anything else, any one other event. The reason this is concerning is in conjunction with all of the other indicators, which will start to stack up this week. So again, I'll get into this a little bit later, and we can see why this might be a little bit more concerning in the context of other events that have occurred over the past few months. Moving down to the southeast region, the storm damage from Hurricane Helene is substantial, mostly in the form of flooding. I've seen reports, I don't know what the current gauge readings are right now, but I have seen reports that some areas of western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee have received almost 30 inches of water. Some places a little bit more so than that, but it looks like we're talking several feet of water has fallen throughout the region since Wednesday. So again, a lot of water in a short period of time. Things are going to get very, very serious. One of the more serious concerns that I think a lot of people had throughout the region is the Lake Lure Dam. Initial reports stated that it had catastrophically failed. That is not true as far as I can tell right now. It's still there. The problem with describing dam failures is that there are many different ways of talking about it. So again, water spilling over the top of the dam or going around a dam or breaching a dam in some way is generally considered to be a failure. However, a catastrophic failure, as in the entire thing collapsing, is probably what we think of when we think of dam failures. That has not happened as far as I can tell. It was kind of dodgy there for a second, but it looks like the Lake Lure Dam is still there. So it did briefly fail, if we want to use that word, meaning that a lot of water diverted around it. Some reports say water was going over the top of it and not just through the spillway like normal. However, catastrophe appears to have been averted for the time being. Apart from the Lake Lure Dam, a lot of other dams right now are still at risk for any sort of catastrophic failure. Some dams have failed throughout the region. However, again, this is a developing situation, so you can't really see how bad the damage is because there's water there. So again, we will find out a little bit more as time goes on and the flood waters recede a little bit. One of the more high-profile incidents was the Unicoi County Hospital, which was flooded in eastern Tennessee, resulting in 54 staff members and patients being stranded on the roof of the hospital. If you look at the topography of the region and of where the hospital is situated, yeah, this was an accident waiting to happen. However, this is a very good reminder to always be aware and be prepared for flooding, especially if you know you're going to be in an area for a period of time. If you can. I know a lot of people can't necessarily predict these things, especially if you're a patient in a hospital. So again, things can happen really, really quickly. Floodwaters are no joke. I know people say that all the time, but inevitably, a lot of people don't necessarily tend to take these things seriously. But floods, especially in mountainous regions, these are no joke. So again, I-40 and I-26 are still closed as far as I can tell. Some portions of I-40 are actually just physically missing, as in the pavement is no longer there, the road's no longer there. And I've seen, again, some photos of I-26 where the interstate is just completely underwater, so we don't know if it's still there or not. Again, we're going to have to wait until the floodwaters recede a little bit before we get better fidelity on how these things work out. Bottom line for that is that I-40 and I-26 are probably going to be closed for a while. So travel between North Carolina and Tennessee is going to be pretty hard to do, at least by land. So again, that might be some pretty serious things to consider for a lot of people who transit back and forth for work or things like that. I-26, according to the locals, I-26 is scheduled to reopen tonight, Saturday night. So it may be open by the time this report comes out. However, I highly doubt some sections will be fully open because they're still underwater. So again, just being mindful of critical infrastructure, especially transportation infrastructure in your area. A lot of people are probably going to be sitting tight for a while on this one. So as far as casualties go, so far, unfortunately, the numbers keep rising. So as of this morning, it was, I think, 36. As of when I'm recording this, it is now 49 fatalities. However, there's an unknown number of people missing. Unfortunately, with landslides and with flooding, there's probably going to be an awful lot of missing people. So again, it's going to take probably a few weeks to nail down all the missing persons from this. So far, it seems like from Florida to Ohio, there are about 3.6 million people still without power. So this is a fairly large event. Most of the power outages, again, occur from water coming in, soaking the roots of trees falling over due to high winds, things like that. So again, fairly standard power outages from hurricanes. However, one of the main problems with this hurricane specifically is not necessarily the intensity of it, but the widespread nature of it. We've got severe damage and major flooding from Florida all the way up to Canada, honestly. So a substantial portion of the United States is definitely affected right now. So again, this is going to keep authorities, going to keep electrical companies pretty busy for a long time. So again, we'll keep an eye on this one, but the reason I'm so concerned about this and kind of keeping an eye on this is that this is a point of vulnerability. You've got a lot of authorities tied up. You've got National Guard forces deployed to help people out and do disaster response kind of stuff, which means that they're not doing other things too, right? So again, any kind of weather event this severe is going to draw vulnerabilities, so I'm just kind of keeping an eye on things that may occur while we're kind of distracted or occupied with disaster response. Apart from the weather concerns, one incident, or rather story, that's kind of come to light, it's a little bit of an older story, but it came to light a few days ago, so I thought I would mention it because people are kind of talking about it. And this is a story out of Virginia, whereby some information came to light during a House Armed Services Committee meeting pertaining to sabotage at naval shipyards. Essentially, the very short version of this is Congress is concerned, or was concerned, about overruns and delays with regards to shipbuilding, and the company and quality assurance people came back and said, well, it's because there's a lot of sabotage going on. And Congress essentially said, what? And here we are. This is a very, very deep rabbit hole if you want to spend the time to go down it, but the very, very broad overview is that these guys were finding a lot of faulty welds which were intentionally done So really the complaint is that a lot of subcontractors were purposefully doing a bad job or sabotaging their own work so that they could come back in and get paid to fix it again. Again, this is a very large concern. It's more complicated than just that. This isn't exactly, a bad handyman coming in and, screwing up something in your house so they can get paid to come back in and fix it. This is major ship construction, right? So, so far, all of the hearings and testimony has indicated that there's no malicious intent. However, again, when we're talking about the building of warships, you really have to consider, are these people really stupid and messing this up accidentally, or are they smart and messing this stuff up intentionally, or are they really smart and being paid by a foreign nation state to come in and sabotage our stuff under the guise of being stupid? This would be a very great opportunity. Corruption and general construction and manufacturing shenanigans usually are not looked at in terms of being a hostile act by a foreign military power. However, that's exactly what you'd probably want to make it look like. You want to make it look like your shipbuilders are just corrupt and they're trying to screw over a contract rather than intentionally hurt the wartime readiness of the United States. So, again, something to keep an eye on. I don't know how much more information we're going to get. Shipbuilding tends to be one of those protected kind of things where we don't really hear a whole lot from it because, well, it's a national strategic asset, right? So I guess we'll just have to hold out and see what else we can find on it. But again, this just continues a much larger trend of intentional sabotage being very, very common here in the United States. Moving on to the southwestern region, let's start with the kind of elephant in the room. I will briefly mention it, but be advised, I'm not going to talk about it here. I am currently writing a very long wire special report on this topic, so I hate to just kind of mention it and run, but that's exactly what I'm going to do. So, a few days ago, reports began to surface on social media regarding an alleged man-pad threat for Donald Trump. So, again, the very, very wave-top kind of explanation is allegedly Iranian operatives have already smuggled in surface-to-air missiles, manned portable air defense systems or man-pads into the United States with the goal of shooting down Trump's plane. Again, I have already written, I think, 12 pages on this so far, so please be patient and let me finish up the wire special report on that, because this is one heck of a rabbit hole, and I want to make sure that I'm wording things very carefully and that there are no foul-ups or misunderstandings, right? Again, when we're talking about potentially 9/11 level terror attacks here, this is a pretty big deal, and I want to make sure that I do the due diligence to talk about this in the most correct way I possibly can. So again, I'm sorry I'm going to have to kind of cut and run on this one, but I did want to mention it because I think it's getting ready to hit the mainstream media, I think. So sort of in the same vein, but not really. Over in Arizona, a weapons cache was found by the Ajo Station guys down there on the border. Looks like your typical cartel weapons cache. However, I think a lot of people were kind of surprised that it contained RPGs and explosives. So these heavy weapons and things like that are definitely being used by the cartels more and more. It's just one of those things. Escalations are definitely occurring. I don't know how common it's going to be for RPGs to be used here in the United States, but we're already seeing, cartels drop grenades on each other with drones, like it's Ukraine or something down there on the border. So again, indications and warnings. We can only look at these things through the lens of a reactionary response for so long before things start getting out of hand. So again, weapons cache was destroyed. RPGs were either seized or destroyed, but if we're starting to be concerned about these sorts of things, that might be a little bit more kinetic. The RPGs and explosives were captured, were disposed of properly by authorities, but again, this is just kind of one of those things that's very, very concerning. And one of the reasons why we can kind of see the transition of this is over in California. So I've been meaning to talk about this for a long time, and I'm afraid I can't dedicate as much time to it as I want. It just requires a lot more research. However, the latest incident kind of gave us a pretty good reason to talk about this more. So on September 25th, an IED was detonated inside a courtroom in the Santa Maria courthouse. Again, very few details on this. The guy who threw the explosive into the courtroom was immediately arrested, of course. But again, if we're starting to see explosives being used offensively by low-level criminals, this is a problem. However, this is not, unfortunately, uncommon to California. right now, the EOD guys at pretty much every California law enforcement entity have got to be hopping because of the attacks and explosives found that we just don't hear about. So just taking two of these recent incidents, some of the more high-profile ones, on August 28th, an IED was detonated in the vicinity of the Pitt River Bridge. It looks like it was partially detonated, so again, authorities kind of found it there. It looks like, my assessment, again, pure conjecture, pure speculation, is somebody probably tried to blow up the bridge and the IED failed. It probably either partially detonated or just burned. Now again, it's California, right? So it's hard to tell if an IED attack is like a legitimate device or if it's some kind of, Seattle Antifa specialist. I mean, not really an IED, but they're trying to make it one, right? So these things are very hard to do, and usually authorities are not going to let us know, hey, this was a no kidding like sophisticated device, or if this was something that somebody just kind of cooked up while they were on copious amounts of narcotics. Again, something hard to nail down, but I did want to mention it anyway because it didn't get a whole lot of press coverage. Another incident that got a little bit more coverage occurred on August 22nd, where 4 Russian hand grenades were found in a tree or in some kind of bushes and foliage in a Los Angeles park, in Baldwin Park. Again, we're probably not going to get a whole lot of details, but 4 hand grenades that are fully functional being found in a park are probably not something that's very common. Very few details on this. We don't know if the grenades were emplaced as like a trap or something, or if they were cached there or something like that. It's very hard to say. However, people, even criminals, don't tend to leave hand grenades lying around, so I don't know, maybe just explosives are being proliferated into California through the southern border at such an astonishing rate that regular street gangs can just forget about 4 hand grenades and leave them behind. I mean, I don't know. It's all pure speculation, right? But overall, it just points to a higher level of concern that we should probably have for some of these more kinetic incidents that have the potential to occur throughout the United States. Moving over to Western Europe, violence continues as before. That's basically the trend throughout Western Europe. In France, I did want to mention this occurred a couple of weeks ago, but again, France is not doing very well right now. They're having very, very substantial attacks both in the south of France and in the north of France. Really places where migrants are congregating. So again, for those of you who are not aware, the south of France, the coast of Nice, Marseille, places like that are very hotbeds for migrants showing up in boats. And then once they've made landfall in southern France, they make their way through the country via the help of NGOs, and they make their way to the northern French coast where they obtain boats and craft from, again, NGOs usually, and try to make their way to the United Kingdom. Places where migrants tend to congregate tend to be a lot more violent, and it's just not even recognizable. You can just hop on any social media platform whatsoever and put the search term Paris in, and you will see exactly what's going on. I did want to highlight it though because again, media throughout Western Europe has basically made any sort of criticism of migrants essentially illegal. So I, as an American, am really the only one who can talk about this kind of thing in a little bit more depth. And because of that, I'm definitely keeping a sharp eye on what's going on throughout Europe, even though it would take me many, many years just to detail all of the attacks and brutality and huge, huge problems that are going on throughout Western Europe. However, high-profile incidents do continue to occur in the Netherlands. There was a mass stabbing attack in Rotterdam. This one was a fairly kinetic event. Again, authorities are claiming that there's no official motive. However, that's very much a lie. The attacker was shouting Allahu Akbar while trying to stab random people. So yeah, I think the motive's fairly clear. The good news with this one is that a lot of bystanders actually ganged up on the guy and were able to beat him into unconsciousness, allegedly. So again, he was stopped by bystanders before he was able to do too much more damage. But again, this is a trend that has swept through Western Europe for years now, but has really just come to a head over the past year or so. So again, I guess we'll just have to see how things work out as resources become constrained throughout this winter. Moving over to Russia, I briefly wanted to mention something that I brought up in The Wire, and that is Vladimir Putin's recent rhetoric indicating a change to Russia's considerations for nuclear first strikes. I know that anything to do with Russia is very much a debate at the moment. However, this is probably worth considering a little bit more for everyone because this kind of, is related to thermonuclear war, I guess. So going back to the Cold War era, really the entire reason for that conflict was essentially mutually assured destruction. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term, essentially this means the United States has nuclear weapons, the Soviet Union has nuclear weapons. I won't shoot them if you won't, and if you shoot them, I will shoot, kind of thing. So that was the status quo for 40 years now, I guess, depending on when you want to say the official start of the Cold War is and when the official end of the Cold War was. Those dates are definitely debatable, I think. However, this is really the way the world has treated nuclear weapons for a very long period of time. Russia, however, has decided to kind of change this up a bit, and Russia is now bringing forward a very interesting problem within the field of mutually assured destruction. So, interestingly enough, Russia is concerned about something that they themselves kind of started. And let me explain a little bit. Back in my college days, I wrote a paper on the idea that maybe mutually assured destruction didn't really work. And what I mean by that is Russia and the United States have gotten to the point, the Cold War, of course, resulting in this, that they're fairly certain that because neither country will strike first, that a first strike will not occur. So really, nuclear weapons, at least the theory from a few years ago stated, nuclear weapons are not really a deterrent for anything. Simply put, Russia invaded Georgia in 2008, and the United States did not nuke them over this. Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014, and again, of course, more recently, and the United States and NATO did not launch nuclear weapons at Russia because of this. So Russia and the United States, this goes both ways, this is a two-way street for sure, both of these superpowers are relatively certain that they can do whatever they want, and neither country will nuke them. Short of American troops paradropping into Moscow, and short of Russian troops paradropping into Colorado or something, short of that scenario coming to fruition, both nations are fairly certain that we're just going to kind of play this international game of détente, and that's really going to be it. And because of this idea, Russia is really kind of changing the game. So here's Putin's kind of idea, or rather, here's what he's thinking. Essentially, Putin is taking the following position. Ukraine can attack Moscow all they want to. Ukraine can launch as many attacks against Russia, fair enough, right? Russia and Ukraine are essentially at war with each other. I know the terminology of whether or not an official war has been declared is up for debate, I guess. Russia still calls it a special military operation, or SMO. However, Putin himself has actually slipped and called it a war a couple of times. But anyway, Ukraine can attack Russia all they want because, again, they're at war with each other. However, NATO has slipped in and is now using Ukraine to fight Russia directly. So essentially, Ukraine has just provided a battle space, terrain, physical territory from which NATO can launch attacks on Russia. So Russia, Putin in particular, is concerned that NATO is essentially just using Ukraine as a proxy, but not really as a proxy anymore. They're using it to directly strike Russia. So like I mentioned before, a German advisor on the ground with a German missile using NATO satellites for targeting guidance and using NATO intelligence and things like that. Russia is now considering that to be an attack by NATO, not an attack from Ukraine. Some have also theorized this change in rhetoric is not necessarily from Ukraine, but possibly from or related to the Toropets strike. Again, this is very, very speculative, so I don't want to dig into it too much, but there has been some conjecture that the Toropets strike was not actually conducted from Ukraine, but probably from either Latvia or Estonia, both of which are NATO members. So I don't think that Putin's rhetoric would change if that were the case. I think Putin would just say, "Oh, Latvia, congratulations, NATO just attacked us." I don't think that he would be using all of these smooth words here to describe something that really just fits better with Ukraine. Again, that's my own opinion, though. In any case, it would seem that the rules are kind of changing. So Putin is now saying, hey, if you give Ukraine missiles that only NATO can use, I'm not considering that to be an attack by Ukraine. I'm considering that to be an attack by NATO. You can argue whether or not that's fair or not to say. I don't know. My own opinion doesn't matter. However, this is the situation as it stands. This matters when we talk about the Middle East here right now. So switching topics rather drastically, let's talk for a brief moment about the war in Lebanon as it is kind of already broken out. One of the major problems that you're going to run into with regards to this conflict, just like with the Gaza conflict, just with really anything to do with the Middle East, I've stated this before, but I feel like I need to reiterate, both parties, all sides, every single ethnic group throughout this region does a lot of talking, and they don't necessarily mean what they say a lot of times. So, for instance, Hezbollah can say, we're declaring war on Israel, and then they basically just don't. Israel can say, we're declaring war on Lebanon, and they really don't. So, let me describe what has briefly happened over the past couple of weeks. Starting a few weeks ago, really as the conflict in Gaza kind of has reached a sort of, I hesitate to say, point of stability. Bombings are still going on there, but really Israel has shifted to a northern front, presumably to take out or try to take out as many Hezbollah operatives as they possibly can. Again, it must be very clearly stated that Hamas and Hezbollah are not the same organization. To my knowledge, I may be incorrect, but to my knowledge, Hezbollah had nothing to do with the October 7th attack, which has been the justification for Israel to go into Gaza, right? That's one of the main reasons, the justifications that Israel is using for their operations in Gaza. Hamas had hostages. Israel was waging this war for hostage recovery to take out the Hamas leadership and as retribution for the October 7th attack, and also to take the Philadelphia corridor to cut off the supply route to Hamas, right? So that's Israel's perspective. Did they actually do that? Well, it's up for debate, so I will leave it there. In the north, though, in Lebanon, this is an entirely separate country. I would argue, I know it's probably very inflammatory to suggest this, but I think that the nation state of Lebanon is vastly different and probably a little bit more legitimate in terms of the historical record than Gaza is. Again, Gaza is a newer issue. Both of these entities, nation states, if you want to call them that, go back really to pre-World War I kind of thing. So we're talking about at least a century-old conflict again. However, Lebanon has had a little bit more stability and a little bit more legitimacy. I know, again, probably all of you will disagree with me on that, but I just really want to cement that Lebanon is a whole different ballgame than Gaza. Gaza is a tiny strip of land on the coast. Lebanon is a largely mountainous region that has a lot more people in it, a lot more terrain, and it's a completely different terrain and battle space than Gaza. The entire Israeli military was built solely for the purpose of taking Gaza. We have to remember this. This goes back decades. That's why all of their tanks are built a certain way. That's why all of their infantry divisions are built a certain way. All of their equipment is built a certain way. And more importantly, their logistics is built for short raids. Lebanon's a whole other story. So, what has happened over the past couple of weeks? Israel has shifted to presumably take the fight to Hezbollah even more directly. Why? Well, ask Israel. Really, I think the only justification that Israel has, or the only justification that Israel has put forth herself with regards to why they're targeting Lebanon is the missile attacks and the rocket attacks from Hezbollah. Again, Hamas and Hezbollah, not the same organization. Different leadership, different goals, but they are sort of allies. I think of Hamas personally, I may be all wrong, but I personally think of Hamas as sort of like a Hezbollah light, a junior Hezbollah. Hezbollah, much larger organization, much bigger, much more directly tied into Iran for sure. And this is an old fight for sure. So Israel is trying to take the fight to Hezbollah because of Hezbollah supporting Hamas and the rocket attacks from Hezbollah coming down to Israel. So again, Israel does something in Gaza. Hezbollah responds because Hamas, Gaza has largely been, leveled for the most part. I don't think there's hardly any place in Gaza that hasn't been targeted, whereas in Lebanon, there's a lot of places that haven't been targeted, at least so far. So where is most of the conflict taking place? Well, this is where we bring in the Litani River. So the Litani River is a natural river, of course. It is a very large river that separates southern Lebanon from central Lebanon and also the eastern portions of the country. Now, this river is very, very historically contentious, so I will not get into the inflammatory nature of the river with regards to international borders. However, Israel has laid claims to the Litani River before. So essentially, all of that orange area here on the map, south of the Litani River, historically Israel has claimed. And we start getting into international agreements here going back centuries. It's a mess. Okay, let's just leave it at that. It's a mess. But right now, all of the orange you see on this map is considered by the international community to be Lebanon. Israel has claimed or laid claims to that territory. Now, what does that mean? This really goes back to a 2006 United Nations, I think it was a continuing resolution by which essentially the United Nations said, hey, Lebanon, you better keep Hezbollah north of that river or else there's going to be problems. So essentially, the United Nations passively or even more directly, it gets into semantics really quickly, but the United Nations essentially said or granted Israel a little bit more buffer zone, so to speak, south of the Litani. Now, did that happen? Not really. Hezbollah didn't really go anywhere. So Hezbollah, largely, most of the attacks coming from Hezbollah are launched from this area. They can be launched from the north, though, so I'm seeing a lot of missiles being launched from the north over the entirety of Lebanon into Israel as well. So again, this is really, really debatable kind of stuff. I wish there was a simple way to explain this, but we're really talking about, I think, the most substantial, complicated, and significant conflict that humanity has ever seen is right here in this region. So forgive me if these thoughts aren't particularly well organized. So what is Israel trying to do right now? Well, really, they're just bombing pretty much everything south of the Litani. Most of the Israeli targeting in Lebanon has taken place in this region. It's really debatable, though, because there have been a few surgical strikes in Beirut, which is just off the map to the north there. You can kind of see the suburbs at the top of the map there. That's the suburbs of Beirut up there. Mostly Israeli targeting has hit really remote areas. So we're not talking the casualty count of Gaza, whereas, a 1,000-pound bomb lands in Gaza is going to kill a lot of civilians, whereas in Lebanon it's a little bit different. Again, Israel has a completely different view of civcas in general than, I think, any nation, but I don't really want to get into that argument again. So really for now, it looks like Israel is planning to do clearance operations within southern Lebanon, possibly to the Litani River. There are a few courses of action. I think what they're probably going to do at first is clearance. They're probably going to try to clear from the Litani River south. They've been training for that for a while. My guess is they're probably going to do an amphibious landing just north of Tyre and probably scoot along the Litani and then try to clear south. That's one heck of an operation. That would be probably the largest operation that Israel has conducted in modern history, right? And maybe even all of history, I don't know. They may try to do that. They may try to do varying penetration operations from the south to the north at the same time. I mean, we have to remember what they did in Gaza. They split Gaza and isolated Gaza City, so chances are they're probably going to try to do the same thing again, or something similar, using the Litani as a natural barrier. Now here's the grand question. Is Israel going to annex the entirety of southern Lebanon up to the Litani River? I don't know. It depends on how it goes. We're probably a few months out from this, from any sort of decision on that front, at least a decision being made public. If Israel goes into southern Lebanon and gets their rear end kicked, then they're probably not going to declare it to be annexed. They're probably just going to declare victory and pull out like every other military in the world. But yeah, if operations are successful and they're rolling pretty good, then yeah, they may annex everything south of the Litani. I don't know. It's up for debate. I think everybody's kind of waiting on it. More pressingly, I think the elephant in the room, which has come to light over the past couple of days, is the targeting in Beirut. So as many of you probably have already heard, Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, along with a plethora of other IRGC generals, leadership, key personnel. Basically, the leadership of Hezbollah was killed in an airstrike in Beirut by Israeli forces a couple of days ago. So this is going to be pretty important. If Israel's going to do anything, it better do it quick, because it's going to be a few weeks before Hezbollah can reorganize to the point of being combat effective again. So they're going to lose the initiative if they don't act quickly. Again, the elephant in the room, though, is not this death of Hezbollah leadership, but the death and what it means to Iran. So once again, all eyes are on Iran. What are they going to do? Nobody really knows. They didn't really do anything. The past couple of times Israel targeted their guys directly. I mean, Israel has struck personnel in Iran, and the Iranians not do anything. So, for those of you who are in the camp of the nothing ever happens guys, it's probably a pretty comfortable place to be with regards to the Iranians. This time, though, I don't know, but war is probably coming. A much larger war is probably coming, because Israel invading Gaza is one thing, but Israel invading Lebanon is entirely different as far as like the international community is concerned. The bottom line for all of this is that war is probably going to break out. Israel's probably going to try to annex as much of southern Lebanon as they possibly can. Hezbollah is probably going to start using much larger munitions to strike targets in Israel more directly. And, of course, the death of Nasrallah is really going to be something to look out for with regards to what Iran's going to do. They've been sitting on their hands for a long time, and everybody's been kind of expecting Iran to do something, and they haven't done anything. So, again, is this going to be the potential for Iran to finally do something? I don't know. It's really hard to say, but right now Iran has really lost a lot of face from what's going on. So again, I would expect a larger escalation to kick off if and when Iran decides to respond in some fashion. So that's pretty much all I have for today. Let's wrap things up with the GhostNet Reports. It was a pretty busy day, a pretty busy week for GhostNet. A lot of people talking about the weather, a lot of people talking about the storms. Really, for me, the GhostNet window this Thursday night was right during the middle of the hurricane. So again, I was surprised to hear a lot of people. I didn't hardly hear anyone on a few of the web SDRs that I tried, but I did hear a lot of people on my local antenna. So there were a lot of people, testing and talking a lot about the storm. Again, the GhostNet is not necessarily a hurricane net, so I wasn't expecting anybody because the ham radio community largely has hurricane nets that get stood up for tracking and reporting damage and things like that. But again, people were on GhostNet quite a bit, so that was really, really good to see. One thing that I did want to remind everyone about, and thank you for the operator who sent this message reminding everyone about the Great Shakeout for this year. This is an international earthquake drill. So this is an international sort of earthquake readiness drill exercise sort of thing. I know a lot of schools do it. I think it's geared mostly towards schools throughout the United States at least, but you can do it as an individual if you want. It's probably geared more towards kids, honestly. But if you've got kids and you're into preparedness and readiness, this is a very good resource for you guys to check out. You can register, and once you register, put your info in. I don't think you have to put in your real information, but if you put in your information, you can create an account and you can download a certificate of completion once the drill is over, and it's pretty cool. For school kids to do for sure. So I will put the link below for you guys who are interested. It takes place on October 17th, so you've got some time to think about it and check things out. For everyone else who may not be aware of what to do during an earthquake, the website has a lot of resources that you can download and just view so that you're a little bit more prepared for earthquakes. So again, I thought that was pretty cool. And just wrapping things up again, someone did mention again the mainstream media reporting on the weapons cache that was found on the Mexico border. So again, pretty cool stuff, pretty interesting that we're getting a lot of these good news reports. And one person here, as you can see, they said that they saw 53 stations heard in 21 states. So they must have had a really good antenna or been located in a really good area. So again, that's pretty cool. So this is really, really good to see. So that's pretty much all I have for today. Here are the sources again. Thank you guys for sticking with me today. And don't forget, be on the lookout for that special wire report. I really felt like I needed to write a little bit more content on this rather than just talk about the whole potential man-pad thing. This is really something that needs to be considered, even if the information is false. That's kind of the theme for the report, just kind of a brief spoiler. Even if the information is false, this is definitely something to be concerned about just because of the potential there. So again, stay on the lookout for that. I'm going to try to have it done as soon as I possibly can, but it'll probably be even longer than this briefing. Who knows? That's pretty much it. So thank you guys all for watching, and we will see you next time. And as always, fight in the shade.